the goal of the podcast is to help all the caregivers out there. So we're focused on the patient's family, the patient as well, but mostly the patient's family. That's, what we call the patient and family chair. So if I'm taking care of my mom or dad, or Chris is taking care of, her mom or dad, it's the overwhelm, being a busy professional, a parent. You're a surgeon, but you're not a nurse and you're not a caregiver at home, right? Yeah. So I wouldn't try to jump in and do your job. And we're trying to help these overwhelmed caregivers understand they don't have to be an accountant and a nurse when they go home, and try to manage medications and understand Medicare and pre-op surgery and surgery itself, and then post-op care. So obviously we're home health and hospice agency. We want to make sure from a strategic standpoint, any keywords that are being searched means that there's a problem they haven't found a solution to. So these podcasts are a great way for us to connect with people that we, know, like, respect, hope to continue to do business with, but also answer the questions for anybody who might be looking at mom or dad that needs to go through surgery.
Or if I could, a lot of the caregivers, right? They're my age, right? They're in their 50s. They don't want to have knee replacement on top of having to take care of mom and dad. So how do I was reading some of your questions, and it's like, how do we avoid this painful process that would set back and create additional limitations for me as that caregiver, right? I don't want to have to stop and have knee surgery. I had foot surgery almost a year ago, and I'm still trying to recover. Yeah. And it was a major setback in my life. I had to have it. It was that point where I had to have it, but yet even almost a year later, I can't do it again. And how do I prevent other stuff like that?
For sure.
Yeah.
Those are important points for sure.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so let's start then. Dr. Kevin Sagers.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Background, specialties, what drew you to the field, married, kids.
Yeah.
All those things.
So Kevin Sagers, grew up in Las Vegas, Nevada. Parents are Mike and Dee Dee. My dad was a physical therapist. My mom was actually a nurse. She kind of quit nursing to be a stay-at-home mom once she started having kids, and wanted to dedicate her time to that. But just the background of the home was health and being busy and being healthy, really. Then grew up in Las Vegas, went to BYU, played on the BYU volleyball team up there, had a great experience. Decided that I was going to kind of go down that same pathway as my parents into a healthcare field. Was trying to decide exactly what that was going to look like when I met my wife at the time. I had some other ideas. Her dad is a ear, nose, and throat doctor down in Utah County in Provo, and kind of started meeting her family, and as our interest in each other increased, and started making some plans. She kind of looked at me and she was like, why would you do anything but being a doctor? My dad was a doctor. It's a great life. You're talking about all these other paths. You're smart enough, you're capable enough, just do it. So from the very beginning, she's been a solid support for me in getting into doing.
That's important, especially in this field.
Yes.
My cousin's a doctor, and I feel like if his wife was not supportive, there's no way to pull that off.
Yes. It makes a world of difference to have them in the corner when things are hard. You can lean on them, you trust them, and to have her all in on it as well was a huge deal during the whole process, and still continues to be. Anyways, we got married last year of college, then went on to medical school in Kirksville, Missouri. Small little school, nothing out there. Great place to just study. There's absolutely nothing but field. So great place to go study and just lock yourself in a library and just and hammer away at the books and stuff. And then the way that school was set up is we did our didactic years in Missouri, where we were just in classrooms and learning all that stuff. And then when you go out into your clinical rotations, you have outside sites that you can go to, one of which was in Arizona. So we moved back closer to home in Arizona for 2 years and did the clinicals there. And I moved back to Las Vegas to do my orthopedic residency, so we'd be close to family and be able to, by now I have 8 kids. So by this point in medical school, we're starting to accumulate a few of them, and we're like, residency is going to be even busier than the school year. So we need to be close to family and have some help for my wife and the kids. So we moved back to Las Vegas, did 5 years of residency there, got great training, had great mentors, and then I went on to do a specialty year in knee and hip replacement out in Wake Forest in North Carolina. So we were just bouncing back and forth across the country, but also getting the most broad experience and had great mentors at Wake Forest, just taught me different philosophies and ways of thinking and ways to handle medicine and surgery and things. So spent a year out there in North Carolina, which was beautiful. We loved it. Would have stayed there, except all our family was all back here. So we moved back, got a job here in Salt Lake Valley, West Jordan, and then Lehigh Hospitals is where I do most of my clinics now, and I've been here for a few years now.
Nice.
Now we have 8 kids. They're kind of locking into their school and neighborhood and friends, and they have their little groups and sports teams and stuff. So we're loving life.
Is there any volleyball players in the family?
Not yet.
No.
They're only 12.
Yeah, my oldest is 12. They've played a couple of the like really little league, the really recreational leagues, and they kind of thought it was fun, but then they've also fallen in love with other sports, and we've just said like, whatever you guys want to do, we're here for it. So one kid plays lacrosse, a couple kids play lacrosse, one plays softball, one is really into gymnastics. So
does your wife have a sport?
She actually ran track at BYU. That's how we met. So she was she was a sprinter, a long jumper, did the heptathlon at BYU, and was an amazing athlete. So just all around, kind of runner, but just all around kind of fitness. But she played a lot of sports growing up too. So both of us get to kind of enjoy with the kids doing things and being active and stuff.
Yeah,
too.
Kids are the best.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Okay, so we're grateful to have you here, first of all. There's a lot of things we want to get to today. You have an interesting approach to surgery, which we want to talk about. Some of the things we want to go over in our back and forth getting ready. What are other things besides joint replacement? We'll get to that in a little bit. What's the deal with robots?
Yeah.
Joint replacement?
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah. How can patients who have surgery recover the best, the quickest? And what else is new in joint replacement surgery? So those are some of the things we want to get to, but we have some other things that we want to go over first.
Sure.
Oh, okay. So was there like one moment that you knew your life needed to go a different path? Like you're in school, your wife is telling you this, but was there an aha moment for you that you realized that instead of maybe just being a physical therapist, you wanted to reach for something bigger and greater? And what was that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was like necessarily this kind of aha moment, like I'm called to do this or anything like that. Some people have that experience. I wouldn't say mine was necessarily it. I was always like kind of academically, I was very blessed and lucky. I was academically gifted. School was not a huge struggle for me. And a lot of that I attribute to my parents and, my upbringing and how disciplined they were with it and things like that. But also just, I was lucky. I was blessed. Some things just came naturally to me. And so I was going through school and being a college athlete, you really ought to have a good deal of time management skill and discipline to be able to get good grades. And I was doing well in school. And so as I'm juggling this decision, my wife kind of came to me and she's like, why would you want to do a field where, you could be potentially working for somebody else? Like, why wouldn't you want to be your own boss? Why wouldn't you want to have command of your own time? You're certainly skilled enough to do it. And I was just kind of like, well, medical school, that's a long road and it's a lot of debt and it's a lot of time and all this stuff. And it's very stressful when you're done. I was making all the excuses. And then I would say the one turning moment where she's kind of in my ear and I'm listening to her, but also kind of like trying to still do my own thing. I talked to my uncle, who's a cardiothoracic surgeon, does heart transplants, like big surgeries.
That's amazing.
And has been for years and years and years. He's now retired. And so I was talking to him at the time and I just said, I've kind of considered all these other routes. What do you think these days about medical school and being a doctor? You've lived like a very stressful life of, a heart surgeon, but also a very successful life and a rich life. He had 6 kids and they're all healthy and strong and doing great and stuff too. I was like, you've lived a life that a lot of people would enjoy. What do you think about medical school? And he goes, I'll just put it to you this way. He's like, there's a lot of people that I've known that have gone other routes, PA, NP, PT or whatever, that end up going to medical school. He's like, I've never met a doctor that wishes they were something else. And I was like,
that's a good way to put it.
Okay, like, you would, and that's, I think that's what entered my mind most of like, I don't want to go down another route and regret it. If it sounds like you go down this route and you never regret it, and you never want to go back and do something, something else, then that sounds like a career to me. And so I would say that was kind of the turning moment where really I started to listen to my wife, my girlfriend at the time, but my wife now, and just be like, okay, like I think I can do this. And if you're in my corner and you're on board to go through all this time and all this debt and, we'll figure it all out together, that also makes it easier. So I would say that was kind of the turning point.
I love that you had the discipline plus someone in your corner to help you make that decision, because as a healthcare provider, you have to sometimes dig really deep. Like this, being a doctor is not a cakewalk.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of pressure. And in your notes, you kind of talked about how if you had a magic wand, you would wave and say, patients, doctors just can't fix you.
Yeah.
You have to do a lot of this a lot yourself. And something we really work on at Aspire is we teach our employees, you're a teacher, right? Because we have to teach people how to utilize what the doctors do. You have to take the medications right. You have to do the exercises that you're asked to do. And so having that discipline helps. But boy, it's just not easy to be a doctor. And you really have to dig deep with people who especially have this idea that you're just this magician who's going to make them all of a sudden better.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of, I think it's going away, but there's this old notion that doctors, we go to the office and then we go drive in our fancy sports car to the golf course for the next 4 hours and just get to, enjoy this really fancy life. But that's not reality at all. And I don't know if it wasn't.
You probably have a Sprinter van.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. Well, not a Sprinter van. We don't drive the Mercedes, that's for sure. But it's this life where, especially if you really care about patients and you have a patient that you see in the office that is struggling, it's hard to not think about that patient. And then when you're trying to go be with your family or you're trying to, be involved in a different type of activity, those patients are always on your mind. They wake you up at night as you're thinking about them. You get phone calls in the middle of the night. Like it is something that you have to be fully invested into and be fully committed to do it right, I think. You need this background of support because there are times where you feel like you're carrying the world on your shoulders.
Oh, I feel that.
And the stress of it. And, again, there's not always easy solutions to things. And sometimes there's not solutions to things at all. But there's this perception of like, well, you're the doctor, fix it. And you're like, I'm not God. I'm not the creator. I can't snap my fingers and just make you healed. I don't have that power and I would never pretend to. I'm doing the best that we can with the things that we know and the things that we do understand and always try to play statistics. But even in statistics, there's nothing that's 100% ever.
You always have outliers.
Yeah, you always have outliers. So to try to navigate that is very difficult. And it take commitment and it does take a support network, not only at home, but even within the field and within the office and within, healthcare itself. And that's why we have these collaborations with other people because we just can't be everything to everyone all at once. So it's good to have that foundation of contacts and support as well.
So tell me, you've told us about you and how you got here, your journey to becoming a surgeon. Tell me what a typical day looks like. Surgeries, patient interactions, you said team collaboration. I'm interested as well about, pre-op physical therapy. I've heard that can be helpful. And then what we had to figure out when my grandfather was hospitalized was what to do afterward. And that's when we discovered that home health and hospice was even a thing. So post-op care. But tell me about a day in your life being a surgeon and a busy dad, and then what those collaborations look like.
So I would say there's basically two kind of channels in my day-to-day. It's either a surgery day or a clinic day. A surgery day usually starts in the very early hours of the morning because I wake up. By the time I'm doing surgery, I want to be awake and alert and, have my body kind of be responding and things like that. I don't want to be dragging. So I get up and work out
What time do you get up?
Usually about 4:45 on a surgery day. Get up, get moving, working out. My mind's awake, my body's awake. I usually, surgery start times are usually 7:30, but we're there usually 6:45 trying to get things ready. Some of the hospital staff are there even earlier, getting rooms ready, opening, sterile instruments and things like that. So a lot of balls are already rolling by the time I get to the hospital. And then, see those first patients in the pre-op waiting area. They've hopefully, the way that I kind of set things up, I deliver a lot of information to people's cell phones nowadays. It's all digital, right? In the old days, you used to either have to go to a joint replacement class 2 weeks before surgery to get the rundown of what it was look like, or then they converted it to a binder that they gave you and you had to read through it and keep track of it, right?
Yeah.
Now it's just with the technology, I can get their cell phone number, put it into a system. It sends them automated text messages and videos and all kinds of digital content straight to their cell phone that they get to watch. And it updates them on every step of the path, right? So I usually walk in and see them in the preoperative area. My first question is, did you get a video yesterday that talks about today? And with the rare exception of some kind of glitch in the system, they say yes, I don't have any questions. Thank you. Like, I'm excited to get this done today, or I'm nervous to get this done today, or whatever. Then we go and we just go through the surgery. So surgery is, nurses, scrub techs that are, passing back and forth instruments, anesthesiologists, the whole team. One of the things I love about joint replacement surgery, some people think that it would get really repetitive and boring doing the same types of surgery every time you're in the operating room. But I actually find it to be, every case is a little bit unique. Every case, there are different challenges in different patients. Every knee and every hip is different. Every body is different. So you have to deal with those challenges. But when you're really just going through and people talk about getting in like a flow state.
Right.
To me, it almost feels like a well choreographed dance. I am not a dancer. Don't ask me to dance.
That was the next
I am the worst dancer in the world. But it feels like this flowing dance between your team,
Good
right?
care feels orchestrated.
Yes, it feels, it's very orchestrated. Everybody knows the next thing. It just flows, it goes. And I actually love that feeling of operating in that flow state that they always talk about, of just like everybody knows their responsibility, everybody's doing it at their highest level. And then when the surgery is done, you feel this joint replacement move back and forth, and you're like, that's awesome. It's great. That's exactly, the plan was executed exactly how we wanted it to be. It looks great on an x-ray. It moves great in my hands while I'm feeling it. We took this patient that was debilitated by pain, and after they go through this recovery, they should be doing very well. And you walk out of there with confidence. And you just get to do that multiple times on a surgery day, just in and out. Right? And then that usually goes into the afternoon. Hopefully most of those patients that we operated on in the morning are going home that afternoon. Nowadays we can do same day discharge from total joint replacement, which is a huge change.
That's crazy.
From even when I did my initial training. When I did my initial training, it was you stayed 3 days in the hospital and then sometimes went to a rehab center. Before that, it was you would stay 7 to 10 days in the hospital and then maybe a rehab center. And now it's like within 3 hours, we can get people up and walking and up and down stairs and back to their car and home. And
that's amazing.
And I call them the next day and they're like, yeah, I'm doing all the things that you said I'd be able to do.
That is wild.
So it's come a long way, but that's kind of a surgery day. After I finish the surgeries, discharge them, then go home. I wish I could show you my Google Calendar on my phone for a typical afternoon after work. I basically report to my wife at that point and say, where do you need me? What's next?
Second job.
And if we haven't gone over it the night before, she says, you're doing this, and then you're doing this, and then I say, yes, ma'am, and I get in the car and drive carpools and cook dinner and clean up messes and whatever she needs me to do.
Yeah.
Until we both hit the pillow at 10 o'clock at night, exhausted.
Exhausted. What a beautiful day, though.
Yeah, and it's full. It's full.
What a full, fun life.
It feels good. So that's a surgery day. And then clinic days is, I guess I would say, kind of putting out the fires. If somebody's having some kind of issue, whether it's pre-surgery, they're coming in and they're having pain and they want surgery, you got to figure out, okay, are you safe for surgery? Is your situation appropriate for surgery? Can we plan for surgery? And in the vast majority of people, we can figure out a plan to get that done. Sometimes we have to have harder conversations of look, you have some risk factors that this might be dangerous. This might be more dangerous for you than the benefit would be good for you.
Right.
You have to have those conversations every once in a while. And it's hard because, again, people want you to fix everything, but there's some things that have been going on for decades that I can't just snap my fingers and make go away.
Yeah.
Right.
I also like that you do that risk analysis with them. There's been history sometimes where maybe physicians will just do it just for the financial payoff that they get.
Yeah.
And I love that you're analyzing that you're really considering the patient, who the patient is and the risk factors involved, what has been their life, instead of just thinking of what do I get out of this.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I think that's part of the responsibility of being the
physician.
Kind of the physician. You're standing at that gate and saying, yes, this is appropriate for you, or no, this is not appropriate for you because you don't have the right condition for it. I can't tell you how many times people come in and they're like, I've been told I need a knee replacement, and I look at their x-rays, I move their knee, I look at everything, I'm like, you don't need a knee replacement at all. That's not going to fix any of the problems that you're having. But then there's other people that do have bad arthritis and they would benefit from a knee replacement, but they're 93 years old. They've had 4 heart attacks. They have all these stents in their heart. Their kidneys don't really work anymore. And it's like, I don't know if that's a good idea. And we can find some other ways to hopefully improve your quality of life and keep you living the best quality of life that you can. But I don't know that surgery is always the best answer for those people. And then there are some people that it's like, well, you know what? You're a candidate, but you may need to make a change. Right? Like, for example, smoking is a huge risk factor for complications after surgery. That's something that we can modify. So let's figure out how we can make you a better candidate by modifying the things that we can modify, and then thereby, increasing the chances of our success together. So that's the clinic day, is you're navigating through all of these, conversations and topics with the patients. And then sometimes there are patients afterwards that are having an issue, and you have to, pull out your thinking cap and figure out why are they having this issue, and is there a way that we can improve it, and things like that. So clinic days are often more challenging than surgery days, mentally and emotionally,
right?
Because you really have to solve all those problems for people.
How often do you rely on a post-op team like a home health agency to go in and take care of wounds or physical therapy after a surgery?
Yeah, all the time. So my regimen right now is, for the first 2 weeks especially, I utilize home health and other services just to make sure that first couple of weeks we're getting optimal healing. And without putting all of that burden on the patient to now go to all these different appointments. They may be in pain, they may have people that are trying to get back to work and things like that. So yeah, I try to utilize a team of people and eyes and ears and hands to be extensions of myself, right, to make sure that we're guiding people through that process. And I've worked with some of your therapists as well. I think that's how they kind of came to.
That's how we got to know you.
Yeah, I came to know that Sagers is doing something a little different here, so
absolutely. Before we get to that, I want to ask you if there's a surprising or humorous surgery, like in surgery moment you have, something out of the normal, something funny, something surprising that's happened on a surgery day during a procedure.
We try to avoid anything.
I was going to say, you don't really want too many surprises.
We try not to have too many crazy things happen. I would just say sometimes, the pathology that can be present in someone's joint when you have bad arthritis or other conditions that are making them need the knee replacement. Sometimes it's just shocking how resilient the body can be. One, in that they were living with this condition for so long,
right,
and still,
adaptable,
adaptable, and being functional, and I'll never forget. I think I might even have the X-ray on my phone. Out in Wake Forest in North Carolina, we had this guy come in, and he had the worst bone deformity and arthritis I have ever seen in my entire life. He was like in his late 70s or early 80s. He was a farmer. Right.
Tough guy.
Yeah, just tough guy.
Tough guy.
Comes in. We actually see the X-ray before we're going in to see him, and my attending and I are just both like, our minds are just spinning of like, how are we going to fix this? Because that's how our minds work, is how are we going to do this joint replacement? This thing is so abnormal. How are we going to fix this knee? Looking at this X-ray. And we walked in and he goes, oh no, I just need a prescription for ibuprofen. Like, I got cows to take care of, I got lawns to mow, fields to mow, stuff to do. He's like, I'm not here to talk about surgery, I just need a prescription for some ibuprofen. And we were just like, whoa. Like, if you look at this X-ray, you're just, whoa. Like, what a resilient guy, And obviously there's some genetic things there too, where he basically can't feel pain or something is going on, because not everybody's like that, but just the body's resilience, right? And then sometimes some of the things that we do in surgery are not gentle either, and then you see them afterwards and the patients are doing fine and you're like,
tell us some of the tools you're using.
We're using saws, hammers, we're banging on things, we're cutting things with power tools that you use in your garage, drills, screws, plates, all kinds of things, and we do stuff, and then
my joints are
hurting
now.
Yeah, it's crazy, but and that's what I mean. Like, you can do something and not be super gentle during the procedure, and then the patients come out and they're like, I feel great, So I would say that kind of the humorous thing is, knowing what I know is going on inside of the operating room, and then seeing the patients after, and seeing how resilient they are and how adaptable they are, and how amazing the human body is always amazing to me.
I just have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Did he get surgery surgery, or did you just give him ibuprofen?
We just gave him ibuprofen. We're like, hey, if you don't want surgery,
there's some farmer out there that needs his knees done.
Man, he is just riding around on a tractor, happy as a clam with his ibuprofen. So.
All right. So we kind of talked about how if you could change one thing, you'd wave your magic wand and let everybody know physicians aren't magical and not God and cannot create.
Per se, kind of, sort of, but they can't fix everything. Because I think you guys are magical. But I get the point. I think it is wild how like intelligent and like all of these things. But I just want to make the point. They are magical.
Sure.
In a way.
Absolutely.
But can't fix everything.
They can't fix.
Yeah.
What are some of the other myths out there about having knee surgery that you're familiar? I mean, we have all kinds of myths about hospice and scary, bad, but they're not true. What are the myths about surgery that you wish people would know not to be afraid of?
I would say, just kind of along that same vein of the problems that have developed over the course of 30, 40, 50 years can be undone in the course of like a week of recovery, right? And sometimes, again, it's hard to generalize things, right? I always tell people that everything that I do is on a bell curve, and that just statistically speaking, a treatment is going to be great for a vast majority of patients, but there's going to be a portion of patients that it doesn't affect at all. And that can be from whether Tylenol is a good medicine for you.
Ibuprofen.
Some people, I take a Tylenol and I feel like Superman. I don't feel a thing. Some people take crazy amounts of Tylenol and they're like, I didn't notice any difference at all. Every body is different. Every person is different. Every genetic makeup of a human being is completely different. And so many, that offers so many variables into what we do. So I think that's one myth that I could say is just because your neighbor had some experience doesn't mean that's going to be your experience. Just because you had an experience with a knee doesn't mean that's going to be your experience with a hip. And even just because you had an experience with your knee doesn't mean that's going to be your experience with the other knee, right? Even in the same patient, different things can happen that can cause different, outcomes. So I would say, one thing that I wish people would do, and this isn't everybody, but doctors need grace too, right? Doctors need patience from patients to say, we're trying our best. You have to try your best. We can't do everything, and results may vary, right? And that's just the truth of it. As much as doctors, want to try to portray ourselves as, we hit the bullseye every time because we try and we do everything that we can. That's just not reality. And
sometimes there's a little bit of an ego that goes with that. MD.
For sure. No, for sure. Sometimes doctors bring it on themselves, and I'll be the first to admit that.
You're pretty humble.
Well,
8 kids keep you pretty humble. And a wife that tells you which direction to go in.
I think if you really, even if with those really egotistical doctors, if you caught them in the right moment and were talking to them in reality, based in reality, most of them would admit that we're not perfect. The burden is heavy from patients, and the expectation is real that we are perfect, and we try to be. But I would say that that's like the biggest myth that we need to dispel, is that doctors are perfect and know everything, just because it's not possible.
So a myth I heard, and I don't know, you can debunk this or not, is that you either have a really great orthopedic surgeon with poor bedside manners, but really great surgery skills, or if they're really great bedside people, their surgery skills may be a little lacking. And you've been very personable so far.
So I'm a terrible surgeon.
I'm like, my foot surgeon.
Wow, Chris went there.
Well, I did. I mean, is there some truth to that?
No, I would say times have changed surgeons. I think nowadays, in a lot of situations, right? I think nowadays market pressures say you have to do both. You have to be a good surgeon, and you have to spend time with people, because if not, they'll get online and they'll trash you. That patient will, or they'll tell all their friends, "Oh, that guy was such a jerk," and stuff. And so market pressures, and the governments and the insurances have tried to encapsulate that with surveys that they send to the patients, and then they send those scores back to the doctors or to their employers and things like that to say, patients don't like you. They don't like the way that you're talking to them.
Yeah, my surgeon didn't make me feel good.
Yeah.
At the end of my treatment course with him.
Right.
And so I'm like,
And
was that your experience?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was your, okay.
Yeah.
And so I mean, you have to take as a doctor, you have to take everything with a grain of salt. Because again, going back to the fact that the expectation is that you're perfect, right? And not every moment and not every patient, you're going to be perfect. And so sometimes, you're trying to talk the patient through that and say, like, I did my best work, but unfortunately your foot still hurts. And I'm really sorry about that, but there's not much more that I could do differently to change that for you at this point. And so anyways, you have to kind of take that. You have to take everything with a grain of salt and everything into context, right? But I think because of that reality that the doctors of today are now living in, and especially the doctors that are going through training now are living in, it is very much taught to you during the training of like, you can't be that way with patients and expect to be super successful, because reputations will get out and word of mouth will get out, and these Google reviews will eventually come back and hurt you. And while there are still some people that don't really care about the bedside manner, there are patients that could care less to talk to you the way that we're talking now. They just want you to fix them, and then they're going to be on their way, and that's fine. But the vast majority of patients want to know that you care and that you're listening and that you're spending time with them and things like that. So the market pressures kind of have influenced that.
Speaking of market pressures, we heard you're doing something unique and different. That's why Matt reached out to you about our podcast.
Yeah.
What are you doing that's so unique and different?
So with knee, the best way that I can put it is that people are familiar with is with hip surgery. So with hip surgery, the most common way to get in and do a hip replacement in the past was through what they call a posterior approach, meaning the incision is kind of in the buttock area, cut through some muscles, you release
your biggest muscles of your body.
Yeah, big
muscles.
big meaty muscles, and then you're releasing a few tendons off to be able to get the hip into an area where you can see in there, get in and do the hip replacement. And at the end, you try to sew everything back up the best that you can, and hope for the best. Transition over the course of several decades. Now, actually in the United States, the most popular approach is through the anterior approach. And one of the reasons why is because there's actually a muscular interval, meaning a space that you can push muscles out of the way without cutting them.
Oh, that's huge.
And get into the hip. And then you do your hip replacement. And then when the muscles just kind of flop back over, and you just kind of sew up the skin and you're done.
Oh, that's why you gone from 10 days in the hospital?
Yeah.
To your home 3 hours.
Yeah. And you're up and you're
Is that rare to you? Is that something that's sort of unique to you guys, is getting people home so quickly and with less pain because of your approach? Or
more and more people are doing same day surgery, and even in the hip now. So what happened again with market pressures is this anterior approach started to come, and at first the posterior approach surgeons were like, that's just a bunch of baloney, there's no way that they're getting home faster, and but statistics continued to roll out, and so more and more people started adopting that approach, and it even made the posterior approach surgeons analyze and say, well, I don't necessarily want to change the way I'm doing surgery, but what can I do better? So they improved their approaches by either using technology or other things to adapt, right? And so now all hip surgeons have gotten better no matter how you do the approach, to the point where the statistics kind of show if your posterior approach surgeon is doing the best surgery that they can, it's pretty much equivalent to a good anterior approach surgeon as well. You just want the surgeon that's doing what's best in their hands and their experience. So that's great. But so for knees, what we've always been taught, again, 99% of surgeons are doing it this way, is to get into the knee, to open up the knee, you cut through a muscle and a tendon at the quadriceps up on top of the kneecap. You cut through those, you create a split, you open it up, and then at the end, you sew everything back together. Then we tell patients, contract that muscle and that tendon over and over and over and over. With every step that you take, you're contracting against something that has been cut and repaired back together. That hurts and it causes inflammation, and then there's scar tissue and things like that. That just hinders the recovery. So what's different about what I'm doing is a muscle sparing approach. Trademark name kind of out there on the internet is Jiffy Knee. I didn't make that up.
I was like, oh, that's great.
Some people like it, some people don't. It kind of reminds them of Jiffy Lube.
Like the peanut butter.
Yeah, or Jiffy peanut butter or things like that. I didn't make that up, but it's a more recognizable name than the scientific name, which is a modified oblique subvastus approach, which both are to say, we're not cutting that muscle and that tendon. We're altering our incision, angling it a little bit. We're finding that muscle, being able to get underneath it and lift it over, do our knee replacement without cutting it. And then when we're done, The muscles just go back. They're not injured. They're not damaged. They're not sewn back together. So in the recovery, when we say now contract that muscle with every step that you take, the patient isn't contracting something against something that's been damaged and cut.
Wow, that is so incredible.
So again, everything on the bell curve, everything's on a bell curve, right? We have patients, even the old way. I had patients when I was cutting through muscles and tendons. They'd come back at 2 weeks. They're like, I only took Tylenol. I only used a walker for a day. I'm great. I'm all the way recovered. I feel great. And you're just like, whoa. It was a very small percentage of patients, but patients recovered fast. And then you have these patients that just drug on forever because they had to let the tendon heal and the muscle got weak and things like that. And it was a long recovery process. This is just taking that bell curve and it shifted it all forward.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah. So now we have a really high percentage of patients that within days are off a walker or cane at all. A lot of them aren't even taking narcotics after surgery, after a knee replacement. They're just using Tylenol for pain,
that's big,
which is huge as far as our narcotics epidemic and abuse that's going on in the United States, and addiction and things. Not to mention side effects of nausea and delirium and things like that associated with those medications. So we've taken that bell curve and we've just shifted it way forward to the point where I just saw a patient a couple weeks ago. He's 6 weeks out from surgery from a knee replacement, and he was driving down to participate in an adult softball league tournament. Like he was going to go run the bases.
That's awesome.
I've had patients say, they come back for the 2 week appointment, and this was actually the way that one of your therapists came. A patient that I wouldn't say that you were going to expect her to be one of these really fast recoveries, but within days was off a walker or cane, didn't ever use narcotics. By 2 weeks, she's just walking in. She walked into the office as if she hadn't had surgery yet, and just walked into the office. And the therapist was just kind of saying, like, I didn't really have to do anything. Like this was, like she just had the range of motion. She was up and walking. Like, so it's been, as far as a single change, and it's a relatively simple change. We just change the incision and we find the muscle and we move it. And then everything after that is the same. But it's such a simple change. As far as a single change that I've ever seen in technique, I've never seen such a drastic change in the recovery afterwards.
Yeah, it's wild. You said something earlier that I want to touch on before we talk about robots.
Mm-hmm.
You said these patients are expecting you to fix something in an hour-long surgery, 2-hour-long surgery that has been accumulating for decades. So prevention, diet, exercise, all of those things. You go to the gym, it sounds like, and we know that building muscle is like the greatest way to kind of fight the weakness as we age and keep your body and muscles and joints healthy. So what's your professional opinion on diet, exercise, prevention? Like, what are things that people can do that are in their 30s and 40s? And it kind of goes back to something I read this morning, a doctor I follow online, and he said the diabetes that you're dealing with in your 40s started by poor eating in your 20s.
Yes,
this is true.
100%.
So in regards to, we'll do a second episode about working out in college sports, and we won't talk about BYU versus Utah in this episode, but we'll get there.
The first time they're going to have the Holy War.
Yeah, not till November.
Back in November.
A few years.
5 years. Yeah. Although the Utes were awesome this weekend.
They were, both teams played.
Both
had
teams
great weeks.
played,
I always say this, even though I played at BYU, I cheer for any Utah team until they're playing each other.
Right. And then you have to.
And then you have to choose sides because they're playing each
other.
other. But I'm so happy that the Utes are good. I'm so happy that the Cougars are playing well. Like, Utah is just the place to be.
Right.
It's awesome.
I want to get your thoughts on hockey maybe later, but I think that's exciting.
My son-in-law who broke his hip playing hockey. He's 28.
Oh, yeah, that's
28.
But to your point, so prevention is absolutely key, I should say. Prevention is absolutely key with so many things in health. And honestly, in our healthcare system, our healthcare system comes under a lot of scrutiny in the world and even within our own country. A lot of people look at it and say it's very inefficient. We spend too much money.
We spend the least amount of money, is what a report came out today, is that out of 10 countries, the U.S. spends the least amount of money on their healthcare.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's new, because usually they say per capita that we're like blowing out the spending, right?
Is it that Americans spend the least, or like the hospital? Like there's a waste in the healthcare system?
I think it was probably geared more to socialist medicine than probably so.
Yeah, but I would say my personal big critiques of our healthcare system is the lack of focus on education early on, the lack of focus on mobility early on, the lack of focus on continuing, physical standards from young ages to say, this is what is healthy, right? We have moved to such a sedentary lifestyle, digital, work from home, all this stuff, as opposed to like the farmer in North Carolina that is 85 years old, can deal with pain because he knows he's just got to go take care of his cows, or else the cows are going to get sick or not be fed or anything like that, right? So there's been this shift in our economy, in our lifestyle, and our expectations of what life should be, right? To just, I want to be comfortable. I never want to experience any type of like pain or resistance or soreness or anything. And all of that is counterintuitive to actual health, right? We need to educate people on health. We need to, from very young ages, we need to get back to, there is a physical education, curriculum that we need kids to be able to do certain activities still. Right.
Let me ask you a question, though.
Mm-hmm.
I often laugh. I'll be driving on a Saturday and I'll see somebody running down the road. They're clearly out of shape, that this is the most painful thing that's going on. And I'm thinking, you're actually doing more damage than if you would just go for a very brisk walk.
So that's a good point. I think that everybody is going to have their own different spectrums of what they should and shouldn't be doing.
Like Sean should be running down the road. I should not.
You just had surgery too.
Now that was a year ago. But,
But something as simple as just going out for a brisk walk for 30 to 40 minutes can make a huge difference in your health if you're consistent about it. In addition to eating right.
Right.
Getting rid of all this processed food in our diet. Sleeping well. Having a sleep kind of regimen and routine instead of staying up until the wee hours of the morning and not sleeping enough. There's so many facts, right?
7 hours, 8 hours of sleep.
The studies kind of show that there's a range, and different people are going to have different, needs and necessities. I remember when we were in medical school, one of the first things that they said, because medical school is prone to
absolutely
like just destroying your sleep cycle and staying up all night and studying and things. They cited a NASA study when we were there that said, look, NASA sends up an astronaut into space, and they need that astronaut to be as efficient as possible 24/7, because it costs X amount of dollars for that astronaut to be in space. So they don't want any wasted time, including for sleep. So they studied it and they said 8 hours. That's where 8 hours, really the strong recommendation came from. They were like, too much or more than 8 hours, you're wasting time. Less than 8 hours, you're going to become less efficient over time for when you're awake. So, but more recent studies say that somewhere between 6 and 8 hours is probably ideal. Some people may need less than that. Some people may need more. But the key is that you're actually like setting up a time and saying sleep is important and I'm going to prioritize it, and it's going to be at reasonable hours and things. And then you get up and you see sunlight. There's all these podcasts and studies that are showing that early morning sunlight actually kind of turns your brain on, right? So get up and go for a walk when the sun's coming up, right? That's great for your body. It's going to be great for your mind. It's going to be great for your heart. There's all kinds of things. You could go on for hours and hours and hours on these podcasts, talking about all the things that we really need to get back into our communities and really our education systems about how to eat right, how to move right, how to sleep right, all these things, right? And if you do those things, you're still going to have some people that are just genetically wired to have problems, right? So that's where I think that healthcare, reactive healthcare, like what I have to do, should be coming in, right? But I think so much would be prevented if in our teens, 20s, 30s we were doing these things right. And all of us are,
sure.
You look at us and you talk about what we do for fun and things like that. We're all trying to do those things because, and me especially in my field, I never want a knee replacement. It's not because knee replacements don't do well, and it's just that why would I need one if I can just keep my knee, right? And I can.
Is there something that people can take? And I know collagen is important for joint health, and is that typically why you're replacing? Is the cartilage breakdown? Is that why you're replacing your hip?
So the process of arthritis is that the cartilage is wearing away, and that can be genetic. That can be genetically wired. Cell senescence, those cartilage cells eventually die off, and then now they're just kind of a non-living tissue that eventually wears away, kind of like the tread on a tire. It can be from previous injury and damage that cartilage is injured and wears away faster. It can be from being overweight or moving you see those people and you're like, oh, maybe you shouldn't be doing that to your joints because they're moving differently, because they're overweight or undertrained or things like that. You can do damage to joints that way. As far as like supplementing collagen and chondroitin and glucosamine and some of these things, there haven't been great studies that have said that you can really reverse it in everybody or prevent it in everybody if it starts to happen. Some of it, again, is just genetically based. But what we do know is motion is good. Weight-bearing exercise is good. Healthy weight is good. Overall healthy nutrition, meaning a complete protein profile, especially because you're going to get the amino acids that are in collagen from that as well, is very important. And so if you're doing all of those things, you're giving yourself the best chance.
Right.
If you're letting those things slide, all you're doing is introducing a risk factor.
Sounds like it's just kind of like not living in the extremes.
Yeah.
Right? Like living a good, balanced life. Go to bed on time. Get up and move your body. Eat as healthy as you can. And that's really hard with our American diet we have.
Yeah.
It is so easy. But okay, can you include more fruits and vegetables into that diet? Can you walk more often? We don't have to go to these extremes of running marathons and triathlons. It's great for people who can do that, but
yes,
normal people do not have to live like that to avoid a knee surgery or a hip replacement.
There is a bare minimum that you can do that will decrease your risk. For sure. Obviously, if you're able to do those things, the better, right? The more that you're able to do, if you are able to eat a completely natural whole foods diet and afford it in today's economy, more power to you. You're going to be super healthy, right? But if you can't afford it to do it for every single meal, every single thing that you eat, at least try to do something, go find some of these podcasts that are talking about. Right now, there's actually a tour of several doctors and former doctors that are going around, and they're talking about the dangers of processed foods and all the things that it's doing to our bodies. Go listen to them and educate yourself and realize that, hey, you know what? If I'm able to afford some blueberries that I can throw into my cereal, that makes a huge difference for my brain health, for my gut health, for my overall body health. If I can eliminate some processed foods and cut up some vegetables and throw a little olive oil in them and put them in the air fryer, that's much better than a French fry, right? From a fast food chain restaurant, just in terms of the seed oils and all the other things, right? Like there's so many little things that you can do. You're right. It would be extremely hard to live the perfect healthy life in our economy right now and in our food industry and everything. But we need to start moving in that direction, because right now we're going off the cliff in the other direction.
And it's not good.
And it's not good. And it's only gonna keep getting worse until people start educating themselves and making the personal decisions to change.
One of the things that I'm always teaching our staff is, you're not a caregiver. You're not going in to do the total care in the home. You are a teacher.
Yep.
You are a teacher to teach them how to use their meds, how to eat healthy, how to move, how to because we have in America a basic health education, probably about the third grade.
Yeah.
I mean, I always have to go with my husband to the doctors because I'm going to translate for him. He comes up with these crazy things. My doctor called me and said to do this, and I'm like, whoa, wait a minute.
That doesn't sound right.
That's not right.
A wire got crossed somewhere.
Yes, because in America, we just have a very low understanding about health.
Yep.
Third grade level.
Yeah. And I think, if we're really going to try to change that, we need education reform. We need to make it a core issue for every child that goes through our education system, no matter what branch of the education system they're going through, that they understand those basics, because it's not being taught anymore. And we need to, and then as parents, we need to try to lead by example and tell our kids, no, like you can have that sugary cereal maybe a couple times a week, but it's not twice a day, right? Those are treats, that cereal. It shouldn't be the basis of your nutrition and things like that. And it's going to take a ground up effort. But I think that if we can start to, shine the light on the people that are teaching those things and that information, that it will make a big difference in prevention going forward, which again is the key to everything. If you can prevent health problems, you're going to save yourself a lot of pain and money over time. You're going to save your family a lot of issue. You're going to save just the system a lot of issue and things. It's just
you're either paying for a gym membership or running shoes now, or you're paying for it later with surgery.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's so hard because, if you stay up late watching your Netflix, right, you can't get out of bed. You actually have to go to the gym, and you have a lot of insurances that are willing to pay for that gym membership. That's one of the benefits we offer our employees here, but yet are they utilizing it?
Yeah.
Right? You have to actually, it has to be able to work into your lifestyle,
Yeah.
right? Like a pair of shoes and going for a walk. That's one of the things me and my husband always do. Every night we're walking our dog, right? It's a good half-hour breath. I'm never going to get my husband in a gym, but he will go for a walk with me. And that's maintaining that healthy balance. Like, it's just, I sometimes think we think in these extremes.
Sure, yeah.
And we don't have to go to these.
Yeah, David Goggins. You don't have to be David Goggins.
You don't have to be David Goggins, right? Like, you
Probably shouldn't be.
I don't know who he is.
Oh,
He's-
I'll show you.
like-
I'll show you.
definition of extreme.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he runs like across the country. Like, he's like just
Like,
crazy.
yeah, he'll run like 100 miles for fun.
Yeah.
That's not a good time.
Yeah, you don't. But to your point, there are, I think we can find some bare minimums and educate people that, like, it should be a bare minimum that at some point of the day you go take 30 minutes and you go on a walk, and preferably, if the weather permits and things, preferably outside, because you know what, sunlight's good for you, fresh air's good for you. Get out of your air conditioned house, off the screens, and go see some natural light. That kind of stuff is actually good for the body. It's good for the mind. By all means, if you can walk with somebody and carry on a conversation, it's good for you emotionally and socially as well. We have neighbors in our neighborhood. There's a whole group of them, and they just go walk around the neighborhood every night.
That's amazing.
And they're better neighbors because of it. They're better friends because of it. And so there's a lot of benefits. And I think you're right. For a lot of people, it's getting back to, here's a starting point. I don't need you to go run a half marathon, but I do need you to move a little bit. Right. And to, instead of eating out, and prepare 3 nights a week of some fresh food. Not everybody is, in the same financial situation and things like that. We need to try to help educate people on their options with those things. But even those people, there are programs,
Right.
that can help with that. I remember, there was a time where my wife and I were on government assistance for food because we were medical students,
Right.
not allowed to have income. We had young kids and things.
Choices on that.
But you can take that money and you can go buy fresh food with it. You don't have to go buy the processed frozen dinners that have, all kinds of chemicals in it. And you can go buy fresh food with even government assistance. And I think we just need to continue to beat that drum, because the more that we can get into people's heads that you can prevent some of the stuff that you're seeing going on in your families or in your society around you, you can prevent some of this stuff by just doing really small and simple things. Then people are motivated to take those first steps, right?
I think sometimes people have this idea in their head, it has to be massive.
Yeah.
It has to be this big, I'm going to go run this marathon or something, when in reality, it's
Like an overcompensation. They're like, oh, my health is starting to decline. I really need to get after
and that's why I'm looking at these people running on a Saturday going, honey.
And I sometimes you look at them and you're like, oh, I hope you can figure out some better forms so that you don't hurt yourself. But at the same time, I sit there and in my head, I'm cheering them on. I'm like, way to go.
You're good for you.
Yeah, because they're doing something, right?
This is
They're at
true.
least trying.
I love that.
And they're recognizing that they need to make a change, and they're going out and they're making their best effort. Hopefully it can be sustainable. Hopefully they don't get injured. Hopefully they don't cause other problems. Like I truly hope that for them. But I'm, in their corner. I'm sitting there cheering and saying, you're doing what you can.
I
Right?
love that.
Go out and do what you can.
Yeah.
I love that. I should
So-
be better about it. I shouldn't be so judgmental.
Well, my wife, I also have to sit in the car with my wife, and this is not a critique of my wife. She's a track athlete, right? And so she was educated on the exact proper form of running. And sometimes we have some critiques of some running forms out there, just because, you can coach some people to some better forms. But again, I'm all, make every small and simple step that you can. If you're going in the right direction, you're going in the right direction. That's the biggest deal.
I want to get to some other things before we wrap up. Other options besides joint replacement and robots.
Yeah. So other options besides joint replacements. Prevention. Again, beat that drum until it's dead. Stay mobile, stay moving. That's the best thing that you can do. Cartilage gets its nutrients from diffusion from the fluid in your joint, and you get new fluid in your joint by moving your joint. So even if you are sedentary, stand up, bend your knees back and forth, bend your hips back and forth. That gets new nutrition into that cartilage. Do that all the time. Apple's tried to do it by giving you a reminder to stand up every hour for 12 hours out of the day. And it's all just that plays into it. If you're starting to develop things, there are things like injections, there are things like exercises that can help. There are some resources online. I don't know if I should like name the YouTube channels or things, but
sure.
There's some things, especially for knees, that are good. There's a guy out there, he's called Knee Over Toes Guy on YouTube. Now, his personality is a little like eccentric. He's a little, he's a little bit of a goofball. In addition, he's also a little bit of, I would say, one of these genetic freaks that can do things that the normal person is not going to be able to achieve. You don't need to, and you shouldn't try to achieve those things, right? But his basic exercises, like his level 1 and level 2 exercises, are great to prevent knee problems. Keeping certain muscles strong, keeping certain things flexible, great things to be doing if you can. And then, there's really a lot of evidence that's coming out about, as far as injections, with PRP. Unfortunately, insurances haven't bid on PRP yet, even though there's a lot of studies that are showing that it's really, really beneficial. It's using your own blood cells to the anti-inflammatory part of your own blood to go in and calm things down and heal some things.
That's cool.
Yeah, and it's not all medicine and chemical derivatives and things like that. It's your own. It's your own stuff. It goes in and it can have really good healing potential. I'm hopeful that over time, insurances will start to realize that it's not experimental anymore. There's plenty of studies to support it and start to pay for that. I know TRICARE at the VA is already starting to for our veterans there, and they're getting benefit out of it. So, but there are some injections, there are some therapies, there are some exercises that can help stave off, the progression of arthritis down the line. But, for some people, that time has passed. The cartilage is gone. The bone's rubbing on bone, and that hurts, and they need a joint replacement. And joint replacement is great. It's resurfacing the end of the bone. It's just putting a cap over where that cartilage used to be. The metal's not going to wear down, so it's a one and done, and you should be good as long as you don't have any severe complication from that surgery. Robots help play into that, and at least in my opinion, because we want that thing to last forever, and in order for it to last forever, we need to put it in precisely. We need to have it be the right size and the right position and the right orientation, even down to the sub-millimeter and sub-degree of orientation and placement, right? Robots are able to achieve that. It's kind of funny. Now, you said that surgeons are magical. I agree. I think I've seen some surgeons operate where I'm just like...
I think you would be magical. Well, first of all, because you're very personable, and then you have an air of confidence with you, I think is magic.
What I'm referring to isn't so much even just with like the confidence and the ability to talk to people, but there are some surgeons out there that when they say I need to take off a millimeter of bone, they can take off a millimeter of bone, and they're like, I need to put this in 3 degrees of rotation. They can do that, and they can be accurate every time. If it needs to be 3, I might put it in 4. I might put it in 2. Like, I can't get down to degrees. Some people just have that talent. They can look at something and be like, yes, that is a 90-degree angle. I might be a couple degrees off, just personally. A robot helps me get that information and know, like, down to 1/10 of a degree and 1/10 of a millimeter that I'm doing what I want to do. So robots, for me, make us more, they're a tool to make us more precise. Now, some people, I think, rely too much on the robots, meaning that they're relying on the engineer that's putting the plan into the robot to do the surgery right. Oh. I think if you're using a robot, you truly need to understand, A, what the robot is telling you, and B, what you're doing with the robot to achieve your goal, and not just say, well, the robot told me to do this, so I did that, right? You need to be in command of that robot. That robot's not meant to be autonomous. So there's a little bit of a pro and a con there, I think. I think some people get too comfortable with what the engineers are putting into the robot and not really analyzing and reading out what the machine is telling them and where they're doing with the robot. But anyway, so the robot is an important tool that makes me more precise in accomplishing the goal that I'm setting out, that I know that I'm setting out to accomplish in this specific knee or hip replacement. And it makes me a great deal more accurate than just my own eyesight and doing one of these and trying to, look at. Yeah, so fascinating.
You are humble enough to say, I'm going to use the resources I have,
mm-hmm.
but able enough to think clearly enough to do what's right for the patient.
Yeah.
I think that's something that's always come out throughout this whole conversation is you truly see your patients as people and are trying to really do what's right for them. And I love that.
Well, thank you. We do try. I mean, that is our goal with everybody.
I can tell. I think that's really neat.
Okay, Chris has the last question, but surgery's done. They're heading home. Chris,
what do you want to tell people about like what they should do to prepare for the therapy, for the surgery?
Yeah.
And what do they do after their surgery? What do you want people to do?
So the biggest thing in terms of preparing is making sure your nutrition is pretty on point. We want to make sure that we're getting a good amount of protein into our diets in some way to make sure that we have the building blocks for healing.
There's a lot of myths out there about how much protein a person should really eat.
Yeah.
What are you looking for?
I don't know that there's necessarily a certain number of grams. For people that are working out, we say like a gram or a gram and a half per kilo of body weight and things like that for if you're trying to build muscle. That may not apply directly to surgery. I think the biggest thing that we want to make sure is that we're getting a complete amino acid profile within the diet so that when the body's trying to heal, they have enough of those building blocks to heal the skin, to heal the muscle, to heal the other tissues. And that I think there's an anti-inflammatory effect of that as well that will make sure that things heal appropriately. There's a lot of studies that show that if you're underdosing on protein, if your albumin in your blood work is low, that you have a really higher chance of complications and wound issues and infection and things just because your body doesn't have those building blocks to then go back in.
We've noticed that with our wound patients that have wounds that are not healing, they usually don't have high enough protein intake.
Yeah. Protein intake, their albumin's low, their liver's not, building the protein and things and processing it well enough and things like that. So make sure that you're up in your protein intake just from natural sources. Meats are great. There's lots of beans and other vegetables and things that have protein in it. Make sure that you're preparing yourself that way. Prepare your home life. Some people might not want to go up and down stairs for the first few days. So if you have a bedroom on a single level, go over those things with your family, how you're going to get in, how you're going to get out, how you're going to get around the house. Make sure that you've kind of got a plan going into surgery. After surgery, kind of same thing. Make sure that you're moving, make sure that you're eating right, make sure that you're hydrating, make sure that you're taking those medications right. And the biggest thing for me in my surgeries is motion is healing, because we don't want things to just get so scarred in. We don't want inflammation to just sit in that joint and have its factors just causing havoc in there. We want those joints moving back and forth. We want you up and moving around. It is a little bit of a paradigm shift from years ago of, you had a knee replacement, go lay up for a couple weeks. Nope, I'm going to get you on a machine that's going to bend that thing back and forth, and we're going to move it all around, and we're going to get up about every hour, and we're going to walk around the house. And those protocols have shown and proven that people will actually heal better and faster if we do those things. So those are kind of the main key points that we go over with people is we want you moving, we want you eating right, and we want you hydrated. And if we can do those things.
Funny, because like with my foot surgery, if I just would sit and lift it up, I'm never going to get the full mobility out of it that I wanted. But yet when I exercise or when I'm walking on it, it's uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. There was some significant pain that was associated with it. So sometimes you have to understand the cost analysis here, the cost benefit, right? You can sit there and elevate and take it really super easy, but that may mean your recovery period may be a whole lot longer than if you say, all right, minimal to moderate is okay, and I'm going to keep that joint and that foot moving.
Yeah, and different surgeries might be different things. Like if you break a bone, you actually don't want to be moving that bone as much. They might even put you in a splint so that you don't move that bone while it gives it a chance to heal. So different surgeries are going to be different things. But certainly for joint replacement, we're doing the surgery so that you can move. That's the whole point of doing the surgery, is to increase your mobility, to increase your flexibility, to increase your movement on a day-to-day basis, which you kind of alluded to before, the age-related sarcopenia and all those studies about muscle loss and loss of independence later in life. We're dealing with patients where we're saying we want to keep you moving for longer in life, and if the knee or the hip is what is preventing you from doing that, then a joint replacement is a great idea. But the biggest thing is we want people moving. We don't want people just lying up and sitting in chairs. And as comfortable as that lazy boy is, we want to use it only for a certain amount of time during the day.
Well, in wrapping up, I think this has been very helpful. For one, we've learned that surgery's come a long way. So you can basically skip out of surgery on surgery day, which is encouraging, but also that prevention's super important. Tell us really quickly, just we're trying to educate people who may have to go through this, right? They've never had a surgery themselves, but now mom or dad needs one. And again, even for, Chris and myself, how do we avoid it? How can we avoid ever needing one? But for those that are really looking, our audience is kind of in the caregiver role. So they have an aging loved one that they're looking to, get ready for surgery, take care of them afterward. They might be living home alone. And so the caregiver is going to check on them and just make sure that they're in charge of their recovery. So at home with a home health team, without a home health team, I think there's also a myth of I don't really need it. I can just do it. In your opinion, how important is it to have, some sort of a care team coming into your home post surgery?
Yeah, like I said, I utilize a care team in almost every patient, or a vast majority of them, because I think while a lot of people can do a lot on their own, or families can be helpful and things like that, it is also good to have another set of eyes to just be like, hey, that rug right there, that's a trip hazard. Or let's move this coffee table out a little bit more to give you a more clear pathway and make sure you don't trip and fall or hit something. Or let's make sure that this food that you're wanting is more accessible on this level of the counter so that you can get to it easily and aren't putting yourself in compromised positions. Those are things that I really think that a lot of people will overlook and that care teams can be helpful with. And then in addition, there's different levels of, I don't know what the right word is, but just levels where someone is going to say, that's actually concerning and we should call the doctor. Some people are really hyper and want to call the doctor about every little thing.
Right.
And some people are like, oh, we'll just see him at the next appointment. And it's like, you should have called me a long time ago for that, right? Having other sets of eyes that have seen different things and that they're either problems or they're not problems, to be able to give advice on a routine basis throughout the recovery period and say, that is concerning. You actually should call the doctor about that, or it's okay. Yes, this is actually very normal. You're going to be all right. Like, just give it a couple of days. Having another extension of our office and our care in the home, giving that type of advice is invaluable as well. So I do think that care teams like what you guys offer are very, very useful in surgery and very helpful to those family members that may have not been through it before, may not know the answers to all their questions and things. Yeah. And it just gives them one more resource that's in their home coming to them to be able to bounce those ideas off of it. I think it's really useful.
Well, I've loved getting to know you. We appreciate you being here. I want to make sure people know how to follow you. So it's Dr. Kevin Sagers on Facebook.
Yep.
And at KevSagers11 on Instagram.
Yep.
We'll put these in the episode. JiffyKnee.com is a good resource. And then your website is SagersHipandKnee.com.
Yep.
Awesome.
We've got patient reviews on there. Every once in a while I'll get on and do a Facebook Live where people can just come on and ask questions and different things as well.
I love that.
There's a lot of information out there and we try to be forthcoming with it all.
Yeah, maybe we set up a Facebook Live just so we can. You say you do that once?
I've certainly done it in the past. I don't have a schedule of doing it, but I like to set them up, and people get on and they ask good questions. They say, hey, I have this. Should I consider any replacement and different things like that? So we can answer a lot of questions for people.
Perfect. Thanks again.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything else, Chris.
Done a great job.
Okay. Thanks.
I love it.